I have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way. You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you wouldn't have lasted long.
Hello there.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
We've had 4 episodes of The Bad Batch up to this point. They've been exciting, to say the least. We've seen some really cool action. What we saw in the latest episode was stunning, and we're going to talk about it. It was dark. It was gritty. It really reminded you of another Star Wars show that you never thought an animated show would remind you of. And so we're going to get all into that. We've got some exciting news coverage for you guys. We've got the Star Wars moment of the week, and we've got our predictions for the last 4 episodes of The Bad Batch. We're wrapping up the season. We're 75% done. All we've got is 4 more episodes left, and that's 3 weeks because we've got the last 2 episodes coming out on the same day. It's going to be an exciting event. Colin and I are really excited to get into that. So, without further ado, I've got the clone conspirator himself here, Colin Archer.
Hey, Carter. It's great to be here once again. I'm a big fan of The Bad Batch. I remember when it first came out. I've had a great time. Just finished episode 12. 12 weeks of Bad Batch. How blessed are we that each week, they might not be the best episodes or our favorite episodes, or, it's a kid's show. We've said that 1,000 times, but.
Is it, though? From the latest episode we saw, is it a kid's show?
No. But the first one we're fixing to talk about is, and then one immediately after that, the first one is called The Crossing. What happens in that episode?
It's got kind of a kid vibe, you're right. The one after that has a real kid vibe, I think. But we'll jump into The Crossing, like you said, and we're going to hop around here. And so we're not afraid to say on the Star Wars Station communication that some of these episodes feel like filler. Some people kind of want to toe the line. They think that's insulting. I don't even mean it as an insult. I just mean it as a matter of fact that they didn't move the characters along much, or they didn't move the story along much, and so they're filler. The Clone Wars had it, Rebels had it. I mean, it happens. It's really not that big of a deal, and it's still, you look at a Star Wars fan in the eyes and tell them you're going to get Star Wars every day, every week. They're not going to believe you, and you're going to get 2 Star Wars shows at the same time, running for 5-6 weeks in a row.
Yeah, today was a day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we did the Mandalorian recording. You're going to be getting this episode on the Friday after that episode, The Outpost, premiered on March 8th. So you'll be receiving this on March 10th if you're listening on the day it comes out. But we just finished recording our Mandalorian episode, Chapter 18, The Mines of Mandalore. Go check that out if you haven't yet, because we have a lot of exciting Mando coverage. But, like Colin said, let's hop right into The Crossing. So we're on another Sid mission, and I'm confident to say this is the last Sid mission that we're going on.
Yeah.
Because of the implications of this episode and the next one, I think severing ties are coming down the line. But the whole point is they're going to get Ipsium, which, coaxium, Ipsium, potato, like there's
a very volatile substance.
Exactly. There's 30 names for fuel in Star Wars. They all do the same thing, and this is basically the same one. And so they're after it, like Colin said, very volatile. And so they're mining in a mine that Sid bought. She got scammed because there's no Ipsium in there until they find a faint reading of it. They go mining it. Omega is this episode's really an Omega and Tech episode.
Right. Another one. But this one is, if anything, these
another one.
Filler episodes.
Sorry, DJ Khaled in the house with Star Wars Station podcast.
Yeah. So these they show some character progression in that Omega's not just a tag along. She is not just being told what to do or reacting to what the Bad Batch are doing. She is the Bad Batch, but the older clones are doing, right? She is kind of taking the lead here and is the one who is solely responsible for, at the start of the episode, at least the success of the mission.
Yes. No, you're right, because she's the one who can get into those tight crevices, but she is having a problem. If you'll remember the episode right before this, Echo left us. It was Truth and Consequences. It was the 2-episode Coruscant arc. It was a big arc. It was a large-scale episode. It was the real successor to the Clone Wars that this show was billed as. And Echo's gone from the team, and so it's only original Clone Force 99 members minus Crosshair and plus Omega. Right. And so she's pretty upset about it. And the guys are so used to change that it doesn't really faze them. I mean, and you got to think. From Omega's perspective, you've got this kid who comes from a really normal, no changes ever world. It's a sterile environment. She always knows Lama Su. She always knows Nala Se. But then you have the Batch who spend the entire war planet hopping. They're not really... The regs don't like them very much, so their only friends are each other. And they're so used to change. Crosshair left. Now Echo's left. And they just move on. The Bad Batch, the team is all about picking up the pieces. That's really what they're about, is figuring out ways to move on through whatever trauma they've experienced.
Yeah. Mission accomplishment is what they care about the most.
Yes, exactly. I mean, they said, and Tech says, we'll always make do because we always do. And that's an important message. So they're trying to harvest this Ipsium. The Marauder, their ship, gets stolen on Wrecker's watch, and we see them get pretty chippy, which makes you kind of feel like Echo might have been kind of a balancing force there. Hunter, also, he seems so tired in every episode. Like, he's really just feels like he's closer to his breaking point than the other guys. Like, he's exhausted because they're on the run. They're doing these missions that they're not suited for.
They're not getting what they're owed.
Not even close to fairly compensated. And so they are, for all intents and purposes, the gang's getting a little cramped. They're not working together.
This is the A team getting treated like the F team, like F troop.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And Omega is not dealing with Echo leaving well, and she has an outburst against the guys. I mean, she really kind of loses it. She's in the kid age phase. I mean, I'm not a parent, and maybe your kids haven't reached this phase yet, but she's kind of back talking them. She's getting real upset with them, and it shows. And she storms away, wants to be left alone, and it's her first real kind of conflict with the guys that I think we've seen in the first 2 seasons.
In Omega's context, one of her brothers left, and it's like they went off to college or went off to, well, not literally in this case, went off to go fight on another front of the war.
Yeah, exactly.
In a desolate situation, and yeah, it's probably super rough for her emotionally.
Yep, you're right. So they get some Ipsium, they're carrying it around, trying to figure out, they're walking to the nearest settlement they can find since their ship has been stolen.
40 clicks away is what they say, which in our terms, it can, who knows what it means literally to them, but in our terms, it's kilometers. Mm-hmm. And so, which is quite a distance.
Yeah, that's a long way to walk.
A long way.
And so we get a little bit of the Lion King in here. There's an antelope, whatever. We don't know the actual name of the animals, but they look like antelopes. Stampede. It's just kind of an homage to that Lion King scene. And then they get trapped inside of another cave. But
there's the Ipsium that they harvested previously.
Yes, but then they discover this is where Omega gets upset. She storms away, and she discovers more Ipsium. And so they're able to collect this. They're able to get they're able to collect more and more Ipsium using her size, and Omega kind of saves the day.
Right. They use a little bit of it to blow out and hike to a settlement that's closer to where they are, or to the original one. It's not clear, but the settlement is abandoned. There's nobody there. All that's left is a speeder that they're trying to repair.
Right.
And a long-range comms relay, of which they call to ask for help from Sid, and she's like, sorry.
Yeah, she tells him to shove it, basically. She's like, well, you're not coming home empty-handed. I'll see what I can do. They have to haggle with her in the first place just to get her to agree to come. And then they still feel like they're going to be stranded because she's so unreliable. And we've been building to this, but I really do feel like this is the breaking point.
Yeah, and even in past episodes, it feels like she was not as contemptible as they thought. Like she was going to be redeemed or not as bad as you thought. Well, it's as bad or worse as they thought. I mean, because this is a dire situation. It could be from her perspective, like, finally, I'm rid of these failures, because they haven't really accomplished much for her.
But Tech details, they've done things for her just for nothing. They got rid of the gangsters in her part. They've gotten people off of her back, Roland Durand and Grinny Malegi. and they've done these things for free and helped sit out. And now she's not even gonna lift a finger to try and help them in some mortal danger.
Which in the Star Wars universe, this is like us traveling to go to the grocery store. They can travel from planet to planet. That simple. It's probably expensive. How
Right.
much does a gas tank of coaxium cost? But regardless, you're heavy hitters. You're just going to strand them. Come on, man.
Yeah, it's an odd, but it's a promising setup. After this episode, I was like, okay, we can really get somewhere with this plot line. Like, Sid has stranded them. They're going to have to figure out how to get off planet. Like, they're going to be upset. We've got something to work with here. Then we get the next week, which is the episode Retrieval. And the batch pretty fast. They fix the speeder bike. Omega, has the bright idea to track Gonki, the Gonk droid that they travel around with. Which,
super cute.
Not even Omega. It's not just Omega, but pretty much all the batch at least treats him as like a pet. Like they acknowledge Gonki. Wrecker is so excited to see Gonki when they find him. Like, Gonki's a member of the Bad Batch. He's the honorary 5th member of the Batch.
And all he does, all they remark in the episode, and what do Gonk droids even
They're batteries. They're walking batteries.
In the tabletop game, they replenish your shields.
Interesting.
Yeah. Remember in the X-Wing?
In X-Wing. I thought you meant in the RPG.
But I mean, it would be the same in this. It's like,
right.
I walk around with a Gonki, a non-sentient one. It's for jumping my truck or operating a trailer
Right,
or something.
yeah,
It's the same concept, except I have to operate it. Where I would assume, just like an astromech, he's able to, it'd be like, hey, shields are low, give those a buff.
Right.
Our engines need a jump start. Let's get after it.
Yeah.
Whatever system
He can take simple commands like that.
They need to, which I would assume on any starship outside of a starfighter, you would want it'd be an indispensable thing,
right,
to have a Gonk droid to sit there that you could point at and say, accomplish this task to help our survival.
Yeah, it's interesting that Han doesn't have a Gonk droid bumping around, but we see a ton of them in the Alliance. You're right. He just doesn't treat them as nicely as the Batch treats theirs.
Because the Millennium Falcon is deceptively large, right?
Yes,
and it's a freighter. And all we ever see is interior shots and them hiding under the floorboards, right?
Right.
So, did you ever think we'd have this long of a conversation about a Gonk droid? I'm so glad we had the opportunity.
I figured we would. I'm just glad we're recording it instead of a phone call like the old days.
Yes.
So we move on throughout Retrieval. We understand now that the thief of their ship is a young boy named Benny who is working for a guy named Mako. We don't know Mako's species. It hadn't been identified. He's kind of a new species. He's got some rocks for a forehead. He's a large guy.
Looks like the Thing from Fantastic Four.
Yes. Yeah, he's got a mechanical hand. And
he's very intimidating, has a threatening presence, and he's the worst of the worst type of abuser, gangster. Go back and read The Jungle, and Mako, you probably see his face in there.
Right. And he's like Unkar Plutt. Like, we see these people, he's Watto, he's Unkar Plutt, he's taking advantage of people, and he doesn't care. And so he owns this mine on this planet, and they're mining for Ipsium. He's told all of his men that it is degraded, and so they're going to have wages, that he's going through hardships. Everybody's going to have to take lower pay, but they want to keep the town running that's based around the mine.
And he's a glutton. Behind closed doors, he's gorging himself on fine foods, while the top earner gets to earn his own bowl of gruel or soup.
Yep.
And the rest have to fight. The rest of 10 or 15 people have to fight over their own bowl.
One bowl,
bowl.
Personal sized you'd get at a restaurant bowl of soup.
We see Benny find a ration on the ground, and it's as though he's starving into almost a bones-like individual eating a stick of butter,
right?
Like haven't eaten in weeks, type thing. Eating this ration, it's wild to see.
It is, and he's definitely abusing his workers. And so, the batch finds Benny because they tracked Gonki. They just get the kid, and he's like, "I am not going against Mako. You guys are not getting off planet. You better kiss your ship goodbye." And so They go on to say, no, we're getting it. It's 3 intimidating clones and Omega with a bow and arrow. The kid's not going to say no. And so Benny helps them infiltrate the mine. There's some exciting scenes of them climbing up a tower that dispenses smoke and steam and heat. Some stealth scenes from Hunter.
Yeah, very cool stuff.
Yeah, it's a good action sequence. And so they find the Marauder and they want to leave, but Mako's already disassembling it for parts.
The hyperdrive is taken out of it.
And so Tech, Hunter, and Wrecker all have to try and fix it, while Omega goes with Benny to try and lower the ray shield that surrounds this place. And Omega's there to keep an eye on him. So they're slinking around, they get all the way there, and throughout their trip, Omega is kind of revealing to Benny how abused he is. She's like...
Yeah, because he doesn't know any better. This is the environment he was raised in.
Yes.
And, like, being a thief... starving all the time is just as normal for us getting to drink a glass of wine or drive to work or something like that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And so he's just really down and out. And so they get up to the tower to disable the ray shields, and they're trying to figure it out, and Benny secretly alerts Mako, which you don't like Benny because you know, he really... Omega gets through to him before that, but he can't get over his, like, what he knows. He can't get over what he knows,
He's
and that's
brainwashed, conditioned,
exactly
all the other things that turn abused people into slaves.
Yeah, he wants to be the top earner because he wants his own bowl of soup, and so he's willing to turn over this girl who has convinced him that he has a bad
stole
life.
A starship. You know, that's another layer of this treachery of this Mako character. Is you're telling me, you know. Have we ever had discussion or theorized what it would take to own your own starship in Star Wars? You know, you steal it and great, but there's somebody going to want to come find you.
Right. They've got transponders. There's ways to track it.
And if
Donkeys.
you had this, and post-Empire, I bet they were a dime a dozen from stealing from the Empire.
Yeah.
Nobody cares if you stole those.
Right.
Right? Because the New Republic is almost pacifist. They don't care. But in this day and age, where you have to mind your own P's and Q's, you have to... I'd pretty much, to liken it to our terms of 2023, you'd almost have to be a billionaire.
Right.
Or adjacent to own a ship like that. Well, these guys do, obviously, because they're Clone Force 99 and yada, yada. But for this kid, a child, to steal this ship, my reaction with this Mako character is just going to just be like, oh my gosh, look what you've done, you know, parading around the streets. But no, that's not the case.
Well, and you know, if this kid understood his situation, he'd steal that ship and get out of there. The batch would be stranded and he'd be kicking it on Naboo. I mean, he'd be gone.
I'd be getting to die you to give me some noodles, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Find the Jedi to
Yeah, you can, I mean, it might even be better to just go to Narkina 5 so you can get some flavor in your food. And so, in subsequent scenes, Omega reveals to Benny that Mako has been lying about degraded Ipsium and that Mako has just taken a larger share of the profit for himself. And so Mako comes to the control room, kidnaps Omega, gets her, and now the batch who have been pursuing some spies that they saw from Mako's group, they come to a head. There's this large cavern, there's bridges all over. It really feels... With these young people enslaved in a mine, it really has a Temple of Doom vibe.
You ripped the thoughts right out of my head. They're on the bridge. Oh, such a good movie. I showed that movie to my kids the other day. I'm going to watch it again now.
Kalima. It's a great movie. And so Mako has the batch right where he wants him because he says, you know, do what I say or I'm throwing this kid into this chasm. And the kid is Omega. And so... we're in this situation where Mako's like, all right, this sounds like 50 years in the mines or 10 years in the mines or however long he says, and he's going to take the batch and enslave them, basically. But then Benny finds the computer that shows that Mako's been lying and shows it to the other workers, and they lose it. They're like, obviously, as you would.
Turn on Mako.
Yeah, and Mako is trying to get him to throw. He has a droid try to throw Omega overboard. Hunter does some really cool grappling hook acrobatics and saves her. And then Tech and Wrecker are really able to shoot the droids out. So Mako's surrounded by his guys. He's swinging a cane around trying to save himself. It's real like, I'm trying to think of the analogy of just the large guy who's about. This is a scene out of something, and I can't remember what it is.
Oh, it's a trope.
It is a
Captain
trope.
America in the elevator.
Yeah. But it
happens to Neo in the Matrix.
Yeah. So anyway, they're surrounding him. He's swinging it around, and then he's about to fall off of the ledge, and he does fall. But then Mako tries to grab Benny and pull him down. And he's like, "You're gonna die with me." It's just like he's hateful to his last breath.
Yeah.
But the miner that Benny was kind of had a competition with saves Benny in the end. And then the miners agree that the batch just liberated them, and now they're going to work in the mine and split the profits as fairly for their work.
Which what they make it sound like, in the context of the show, they're all going to be super rich afterwards.
Yeah. Well, they probably are with how valuable they've acted. Like the Ipsium is out throughout the show.
How dangerous it is together.
Yeah,
I bet it's accident prone. A lot of people lose hands or faces or die
until the Empire rolls in and nationalizes the operation, kicks all these people out. That's what the Empire
turns
does.
them into slaves anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But for a few moments, they'll be okay. So we see the batch leave. They get out of there. They're done. Benny's going to stay back. And really, I kind of felt like the resolution of this episode was going to be that Benny joins the crew, but I feel like that at the end of every one of these episodes, they find a friend in the galaxy, they make it right, they do whatever they need to help them, and then that's that. Like, I thought that they were going to have Gunji around for a while. I thought they were going to have Benny around for a while, and it feels like they're just making lists of friends across the galaxy, while other clones and Crosshair are getting into some real thick and hairy situations. I mean, there's what we're going to talk about in the next two episodes, which one of them does have to do with the Bad Batch, but it doesn't hold a candle to any of these Sid adventures. It's not. I mean, it turns the action up in the Bad Batch and the implications up to 11.
Yeah. So, this is the implications are not just in the Bad Batch. I believe, and we'll get into the predictions, are broad across all Star Wars.
Yes, I think you're right. These are not Bad Batch episodes to sleep on, certainly, because, like you said, they definitely have wide implications. And so we've waited 13 long years for this episode of The Bad Batch. Before we even knew The Bad Batch existed, we were waiting for this episode. I mean, it was a running joke among Clone Wars fans, among Star Wars fans, of they just gave up on that plot line from the Clone Wars. That there was significant dialogue. There was an important part of the plot line from the Clone Wars that we're about to talk about got dropped and felt like forgotten. And in the days when the Clone Wars was canceled on Cartoon Network and Disney acquired the company and we didn't know the future of the Clone Wars, it definitely felt like this plot line was never going to get resolved.
Right.
And so how does this episode open up, Colin? It's an exciting episode.
Yeah. So this one, a ship is a freighter is traveling through space. And it reminds me of like Alien or...
Oh, it's such a cool scene.
It is Alien, right? No, it is.
It is. It's Alien. Yeah.
And so this ship is almost derelict. Smoke is coming from it.
And it emerges from hyperspace in tatters.
We saw this in one of the Mandalore episodes we covered. Harrison Doolittle in her A-Wing emerges from hyperspace damaged and unconscious. Well, this one clone commando, right?
A clone commando, yep.
Is distraught in this ship, and he gets snatched up. That's the end of him. But then the ship crashes on a planet. Do we know where it crashes?
The planet? Well, no, I actually don't know if we know the planet that it crashes on in that one. I think it goes unnamed.
A lot of these are unnamed. The last desert planet we were on was unnamed.
Yeah, many. You're right. They do... In the Bad Batch specifically, we've been doing on our Instagram page, kind of following the Batch's journey. We're plotting lines from where they're going and where they've been. And many of the planets are unnamed, and many of the planets do not have specified points in the galaxy, so they're in a little box in the corner that says unnamed. We're going to do the same thing with Mando. That's going to be way easier. They wouldn't dare not name a planet in Mando. It's live action. People would lose their minds if they knew that they weren't going to name one in Mando.
Yeah, but man, Alien is one of my favorite movies. It has some of my favorite characters, Ellen Ripley, the androids in that, and just to get this little homage is so fun.
Yes, it is. It was a good scene. It was a good payoff. So the next scene, it cuts to something that we don't know what happened on that ship. We just know there's some creature that killed that clone commando. And so it cuts to a place called Mount Tantus on the planet Wayland. And this is a research facility. And
Wayland? Wayland? Like in the Wayland-Yutani Corporation? From Alien?
Oh, okay. I had forgotten that one. So Mount Tantus is a very important callback to the expanded universe. This is chalk up another win for the expanded universe here, because the planet Wayland and Mount Tantus are from the Heir to the Empire trilogy, written by Timothy Zahn in the 90s, that introduced Grand Admiral Thrawn. And this is where Grand Admiral Thrawn operated his cloning program.
Awesome.
And so it is right out of those books. It's an exact replica. I mean, and that's the point. That's the explicit point of Mount Wayland, is we get introduced to a new character named Dr. Royce Hemlock, and he is a cloner. He goes and speaks to Nala Se, the Kaminoan chief scientist who is imprisoned, and he is at first asking for her cooperation, and then at the end he is demanding her cooperation in his cloning program that is obviously mandated by Emperor Palpatine.
Right. And so, yeah, this is the first thing we get to see to it. And this Wayland thing, it sticks in my head. As I said, I'm going to spend a minute on this because I love so much. This is Wayland-Yutani Corporation in the Alien films. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing on Earth that compares to what exists in this science fiction. And so that's a direct correlation to the Empire and what these guys are doing. Wayland-Yutani makes androids. They ship people and colonize other planets, all kinds of other things. But, and of course, in this one, they're doing cloning. And so, but it's also sinister. Right. There's all these tidbits that tie out to these other things. It's so cool that did you know before this discussion? Did you know about Wayland-Yutani?
Oh, I had no
Literally,
idea.
you did, but until I told you.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't connect.
This is why you should listen to our podcast,
right?
Because you have listened to other podcasts about this episode. Have they picked up on it?
Right.
Who in your circle of friends, not you, Carter, but I'm talking to you listeners, have picked up on this detail?
Yeah, and it's very important.
If I'm wrong, may lightning strike me down. But they don't have the opening like this.
I will tell you, Wayland is from the book also. That's the name of the planet.
That's fine, but they can choose where these things go.
No, you're right.
These have the opening like this, to have this Wayland, I'm sure it's built off of that too. Oh, they have their little writers in there thinking of this stuff, but I'm so pumped for this.
You're absolutely right, because the alien parallels are too stark to know that they didn't do it on purpose. Right. And so towards the end of this scene on Mount Tantus, we hear Amiri Carr, another scientist, speaking to Dr. Royce Hemlock. And Hemlock is obviously, that's important. That's a little Easter egg, because that means poison. So it's just implying this guy's bad news. And you can already tell just by the way he talks and that he works for the Empire. But she lets him know that Transport 904 has lost communication. And he says we need to send out a search team. And so then we can connect the dots that whatever's on that transport is important to the Empire's cloning program.
Right. And so also intercepting these comms or some other thing is Sid.
Sid has a tip on the ship.
Right. And dispatches her clone force, who are very angry at her.
Yes, there's a really good amount of dialogue where they're saying, you need to owe us more money for this operation. You were going to leave us on that planet to die. And then when they cut the communication with Sid, Tech and Hunter have a serious conversation about, we need to just stop working for Sid. And Tech brings up the point, she knows a lot about them. We can't just leave her high and dry, because, what would stop Sid from reporting a group of rogue enhanced clones?
Right, yeah. So that's going to be interesting to see how they sever that or whatever. But yeah, so the clones, the Bad Batch, go after this down ship. And, gosh, I'm trying to remember exactly. It's been a couple of minutes since I've seen this. So, do they encounter this, what we're about to talk about?
Yeah, so they head back to the planet that Sid provided it for. They head to space. They don't see a ship in space. So they go down to the planet, and they find the crashed starship. And they just board it. They're like, what caused this crash? What's on this ship? We're going to have to loot this ship. So let's go figure that out. And then they just find an electro staff on the ground. And they're like, oh, that's weird. Wrecker is actually like, wow, look at this.
Very impressed, yep. And so what they find is the Zillo Beast. Tell us about the Zillo Beast, because this is old stuff. I don't remember it all exactly.
People wanted the Zillo Beast for so long, because the Zillo Beast appears in 2 episodes of the Clone Wars, and it's in season 2. So it's, when the Clone Wars had not hit its hard stride, the 2 episodes are the Zillo Beast and the Zillo Beast Strikes Back. And so these 2 episodes are there. I'll really quickly summarize. Mace Windu and Anakin are on Malastare. They detonate a new weapon that the Republic has that is basically a massive EMP bomb. It destroys the droid army on Malastare and then creates a giant sinkhole. Out of the sinkhole comes a kaiju-like creature. It's long and slinky. It's like a dragon without wings, and it has tentacles for arms. And it is impossible to defeat with conventional weapons. The only weapons that they can get to defeat it are these ray weapons that they have mounted to the ATTEs. You see them in Attack of the Clones. And this is the only thing.
In this episode.
Yes, and in this episode. And the only thing that you can see that stops the Zillo Beast is those rays. And so Mace Windu is actually arguing against killing the Zillo Beast, while other people are like, and other Jedi are saying, we need to kill this thing. Mace Windu's like, we can't kill this thing. It's a living creature. We need to figure out what to do with it. And so they take it back to Coruscant to be studied.
Oh, yeah, I remember
at
this
the
now.
Chancellor's orders. And it is, I mean, the Zillo Beast, the whole 2 episodes is a kaiju show. I mean, it is right out of Japanese kaiju stuff. It is Godzilla. And it's obvious that this is an homage to all of those. Right. And so it's
the
kaijus
Pacific
and
Rim movies, if you've seen those.
Exactly. So it's kaiju and Star Wars. It's really cool. It's a good set of episodes, and it's only 2 of them. And so they bring it back to Coruscant. You know, they bring the creature back, and then obviously it gets loose and terrorizes Coruscant. And that's some massive damage. And they learn that the reason it awoke with the ion bomb, and the reason that it is traveling Coruscant is it's heading to the power plant because the Zillo Beast grows exponentially based on like electric energy.
Yeah, consuming power.
Yes, exactly.
And so that's presumably also why it's impervious to blaster shots, because it's consuming that power too.
Yes, exactly. And so the Zillo Beast is it will grow exponentially. Well, back to the Bad Batch episode.
They found this out the hard way.
Exactly, because on the wrecked starship, they find a baby Zillo Beast. And, you know, baby is a loose term. It's like the size of a small horse. It's not, I mean, it's a baby, but it's still dangerous. It's got a weird face. It's got the teeth. I mean, you know,
it looks like an alien.
Well, it looks like
a xenomorph.
What is the name of this creature? You might know, but it's from the Little Shop of Horrors. It looks like the Venus flytrap evil plant from Little Shop of Horrors.
It's got like human style teeth, you know, omnivore teeth.
Yeah,
no
exactly.
fangs, nothing like
and
that.
It's got like a nasty little creature smile. And it is very, very important to the further plot. And I can't stress enough how people are so excited that this plot line is finally getting picked up after 13 years. Because at the end of the Zillo Beast Strikes Back in Season 2 of the Clone Wars, they defeat the Zillo Beast, and Palpatine, then Chancellor Palpatine, goes to a scientist and says, I would like for you to collect the tissue of the Zillo Beast and keep the Zillo Beast for research purposes. And the scientist is apoplectic. They're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so they do that, though. And this is where that thread leads to. And so
Finally,
after 13 years, 4 years in Star Wars time. And so the Bad Batch discover this, and they are fighting for their lives on the ship. Tech is so impressed by this creature. He wants to know what this is. He wants to study it. But they all have to get off the Marauder because the Zillo Beast has escaped and is headed for this small village in the town. Meanwhile, the Empire has sent out forces and sent out clones to go take care of the Zillo Beast. And the Zillo Beast reaches the village and starts getting on its power plant. And this is where you see the beast begin to grow very large.
yeah, it's huge. It's a dragon size almost, and it's really similar to the Clone Wars episodes.
Right, exactly. And so...
And nothing can stop it.
No, nothing can. That the Bad Batch have. And so Omega, on the crashed ship, identifies the technology there as Kaminoan cloning technology. So her and Tech discover that the Zillo Beast does not need to go near a power plant, while Wrecker and Hunter are in the Marauder, firing at it, trying to stop it, trying to slow it down, trying to help this village.
And don't they have like a sample of its cells or like a data pad readout that says it's almost impervious or something?
Yes, they do. They have a data pad readout that says that. And so then, arriving on the planet are the Empire's forces in Clone Wars LAAT gunships.
Very cool to see.
Yeah, it's good
So
to see them
fun.
back. They're manned by clones. Part of these gunships go to begin attacking the Zillo Beast with the rays. Part of these gunships destroy the derelict ship on the ground of the planet, and this is is awful for Omega and Tech. They just barely escape, and they need Hunter and Wrecker to come pick them up because the Zillo Beast has been defeated by the clones, and there are gunships pursuing the Marauder, the Bad Batch's ship. And so they are able to stave off the clones. The clones take the Zillo Beast. Before the Bad Batch escape the planet, they realize they're not killing that thing. They're capturing it,
Right.
which is terrifying for the Bad Batch. They understand this is a big deal. And so as they escape off planet, they know that they need to let Rex and Echo know about this. And so they decide to contact them. We don't see that on screen. The rest of the episode is filled with what the Empire is doing.
This is crazy.
So one of the darker things in the Bad Batch, and that, I mean, it's just implied, but, after watching Andor and knowing what they do with prisoners and knowing how easy it is to commit a crime in the Empire and not actually have really done anything wrong, they round up this entire village. Anyone that got a glimpse at the Zillo Beast, they force them onto a transport. The clones are saying, move it, get on there, blah, blah, blah. We have
They get disappeared.
no idea what happens to them.
Yeah, this reminds me of like some old X-Files episodes or something.
Yeah.
You witness something you're not supposed to, you get disappeared.
Exactly. Yeah, and we know, they cut to Hemlock later, and he asks, what of the people who saw the Zillo Beast? And they're like, they're taken care of. And so they basically die.
And so there is a clone commando that a lot of people are talking about in this.
Important.
Scorch.
Yeah, he is in a lot of scenes. He's Scorched, like you just mentioned. He was the main character in the Republic Commando game from 2005, which is a really popular first-person shooter that was in the EU, and that people are so happy that he has returned.
Yeah, they're saying that he was a much different character in that game versus what we see here.
Yes, he was. I didn't play the game. I've watched playthroughs of the game, and they're absolutely right that he is a very different character. But it's great to see him back in live action. The Clone Commandos are cool. In the Clone Wars, Clone Commandos and ARC Troopers are not literally the same thing. Clone Wars fans listening to this, hear me. They are not literally the same thing, but they are effectively the same. They are elite special forces clones. And so we only saw one clone commando from what I remember in the Clone Wars, and this was Clone Commando Gregor. And there's a whole 4-episode arc about him. But now we're getting to see a lot of Clone Commando in this, and for people who are upset about the ARC Trooper favor over the Clone Commandos, they're very happy about it.
Yeah, very cool stuff to see.
Yes. And so we get back to Mount Tantus. They get the Zillo Beast back there. They encase him in some kind of liquid. And then, again, Hemlock asks, what of the villagers? They say they're taken care of, and then they say, but there was a military-class vessel that escaped, and Hemlock says, you need to investigate that, talking to Scorch.
Right.
And so
we're
going to
have
see...
setting up a confrontation.
Exactly, between Scorch and the Batch, which is going to be really cool
Yeah.
for a lot of people.
And also because of what he says next. Lama Su offers to motivate Nala Se,
And Lama Su being the former Prime Minister of Kamino.
who was shipped in there at the request of Dr. Hemlock. And Lama Su says what?
Lama Su says the best way to get Nala Se to cooperate. Well, first he demands for this information his freedom. We know he's not going to get that.
Yeah.
Lama Su is a fool for trying to think that he's going to get anything out of them.
Right.
He's been under arrest on Coruscant since they destroyed Kamino. Why are they going to let him go just because he tells them something? But anyway, he tells them that Nala Se can be controlled if they find the girl that she's run around with, a young clone named Omega. Hemlock asks Lama Su to come into Mount Tantus to talk about this further. He wants some more information about this. And now we know that the Empire is going to be pursuing the Bad Batch again in 2 ways. In the way that they were there at the attack and looking for Omega. And this is going to come to a head with Sid. It certainly is.
Yeah. And so we know what happens next episode, but in this next arc, 4-episode arc, is where we're going to see this resolve.
Right. And we're going to cover that in just a little while in our brand new segment. We just debuted it in our last Mando episode where we try to predict what's going to happen next. We had a little bit of luck with it with the second Mando episode. We'll see if our streak continues. But you'll hear in just a moment, Always in Motion, our new segment. But first, we need to talk about
The Outpost.
The Outpost, which was a staggering episode.
And this is the 4th episode in this block for how we're covering it. And darkest episode of Star Wars?
Maybe not of Star Wars, but definitely of animated Star Wars.
Definitely of animated Star Wars.
You could liken this episode to Andor. And so
Right.
it had similar dark tones as some of the darkest moments in Andor.
And again, to reiterate, this episode alone has some of the most broad implications across, for two reasons, which we're going to get into.
Right. And I'll just say, I don't think we've gotten this dark an episode of Mando or the Book of Boba Fett. Like, the Bad Batch takes this in a much darker place than most Star Wars things we've seen.
And another thing before we get into it, you need to go watch this. You can watch this episode as a standalone.
Yeah.
You can get some tidbits. You're going to hear what we have to say for sure, but go consume this episode of The Bad Batch.
It's absolutely worth watching.
Phenomenal.
It really is. So, we open this up with all the new Stormtrooper recruits. And I'll remark that the prototype Stormtrooper armor they're wearing is actually the Ralph McQuarrie concept art for Stormtrooper armor from A New Hope. So that's really cool to see them using that design. That's
cool.
really exciting.
I didn't know that.
And so we get introduced to the very first lines of dialogue are clones getting pushed onto ships, talking about being in forced retirement. So the clones are what we saw in Truth and Consequences with the new bill that is allowed for them to, the new military recruitment bill. It's taken effect, and the clones are now retired. They're getting
citizens.
moved off. Yeah, they're citizens, and the Empire isn't giving them a severance package. They're not giving them a pizza party. There's nothing going on.
In context, in real life, wars have been started over this.
Yes.
Small, but effective.
Yeah, rebellions and everything else. I mean, you're
By
not compensating
taking care
your
of
veterans.
the veterans. Right.
And there is, I mean, you're a veteran, and throughout these Bad Batch episodes, this is a recurring message. It is not just about Star Wars. They're tackling real-world issues about how veterans have been treated in history, how veterans are treated now, how veterans are treated all the time. I mean,
Right.
you know personally, the VA in the United States is a disaster.
Well, but there's so many ancillary things that is done for veterans, and like nobody's asking for handouts. They don't want a paycheck. It's
and we're talking about real veterans here, but
yeah,
also
real-
the clones.
No, also the clones. So, in this case, and why this is such a tragedy is these veterans are like, okay, you're unemployed today,
Right.
And no nothing,
Right.
And it's in a sense, it's even worse. And I mean, it's a cartoon, so it's not literal, but in the context of the Clone Wars or these clones, they were bred for war.
Right.
All they
have
known
no other
is-
purpose.
Have no other purpose. They haven't even been trained. They can pull a trigger. They can execute strategy and tactics. That's it.
They don't even know how galactic society works.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
it's
mean,
not
they're-
like these
they're-
guys don't have a credit card. They don't have an ID. They do not
bank
know
account,
how to
they
do
probably never got
anything.
paid the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. They've been taken care of by the Republic. They don't have possessions.
Yeah. And as we see immediately after this, they're considered equipment, just the same as a pair of boots or a helmet, right?
I mean, we get the line from a disgusting
Lieutenant Nolan.
Imperial. I mean, he is... Wow, this may be the worst Imperial we've seen on screen.
Right.
He is an awful person, and he
Awful
calls
person.
them used equipment.
And so in real life, back in the old days when the wars were fought for this, what was gained was not just like a pension or health care. It's reintegration back into society, because we're all humans. We're all normal people. We all have our aspirations outside the military. And like clones, there are some who are pilots, so they can go be pilots, right? But that's few, just hyper few of those. And so it's the same as in the military. You can train for a job specification, but you have been so conditioned for military life that they have made. I took a month's worth of classes. You know, it wasn't literally 8 hours a day, but like I had to go to class this day for a couple hours. I go to class that day for about reintegration back into society.
Right.
You know how, and from simple as you know, we had bank accounts, we got paid and all that stuff. So, but like financial planning, because some people saved up a bunch of money and they don't want them to waste it. From like how to write a resume, how to get a job, how to go to school, stuff like that. And so, you know, that's what most people think of is like taking care of veterans as healthcare or stuff like that. But I say in the reality of what it is those things and these other things. What makes us so sick from people in the know is, here's your pink slip. have a nice life. And it's
Right.
not just in America, because if you found a veteran like that today, there are scores of people who will take off the shirt off their back to help them.
Yes.
And in the galaxy wide, where an empire's in charge, and these guys are perceived as equipment, we saw it in Obi-Wan.
Right.
Help out no veteran.
Yeah.
That's all there was to it.
And
These
there's-
guys are discarded.
I mean, it's
It sucks.
The Star Wars galaxy is rough and tough. There's slavery in parts of the galaxy that the Republic controls. Like it's not the Star Wars galaxy is not playing patty cake with you. And so many of the people who live in the galaxy are not going to view the clone troopers as anything but tools.
Right.
Obviously, there's worse ways to behave and better ways to behave. But then we see the worst ways out of these Imperial officers. But even random people on the street, I mean, yeah, the Clone Wars were fought for them. But again, those clones were grown in a vat, and they're going to die soon. And so why do I care? You know, and they got their own problems. People in the Star Wars galaxy are not super charitable because they got their own crap to deal with.
Right. And so we see this. We see the clones speaking these words. What are we supposed to do? And then immediately after, Lieutenant Nolan saying, I don't like you. He's saying this to Crosshair. And Crosshair is a very subtle, I don't know if you noticed it, but very subtle reaction to this.
Mm-hmm.
And this lays some groundwork for what's going to happen in the rest of the episode.
Right. So the lieutenant, say his name again, I'm sorry.
Lieutenant Nolan.
Lieutenant Nolan and Crosshair go with a regiment of stormtroopers to a planet that has been manned by clone troopers, and it's just been guarding supplies.
It's an ice planet.
It is.
Or it's in the wintertime with tall peaks. It reminds me of like the Himalayas.
Yeah,
Cold,
it's like planet
icy,
Himalaya.
snowy,
That's
yeah.
a good analogy.
And the stormtrooper remarks, you were supposed to be here 36 rotations ago.
Right.
In Star Wars vernacular, that means
Days.
a month. Isn't that not a month and a month and 6 days?
Yeah, it's a month and 6 days. I just
Yeah.
meant rotations as days. Yeah.
So I mean, and there's 3 clone troops left. The reason they're going there is because the supplies are being raided.
Right.
Right,
And the
and-
clones can't handle the Raiders because there's 3 left out of, I mean, we see at least 25 helmets of fallen comrades of these clone troopers.
Yeah, and it's due to the, and we find out immediately after, it's due to the degrading equipment due to the conditions. It's due to the Raiders, and it's due to the lack of empathy and response from the Empire.
Right, exactly. The Empire just feels like they've got bigger fish to fry. And, I mean, they're a fledgling Empire, so they may, but this is still evil that they're leaving these men here to just die. And so I wanted to remark real quick on the planet. It really reminds me of the ice planet in Solo. It's the one in Solo isn't as harsh, but the whole situation just feels like Solo, Enfys Nest kind of vibes.
And so here's another tiny detail that if you don't have closed captions on, you wouldn't know. And a vulture, a bird, from a non-closed caption user, a bird
Right.
is flying over. And there's meaning and context to this, right? Which
And
we're going to get into.
The captions call it an ice vulture.
An ice vulture. And so if you're a Star Wars fan, this is significant because you don't just have horses. You
Right.
have, what does Obi-Wan ride? What is that thing called?
Yeah, what is an Eope? An
An
Eope.
Eope.
Yeah.
Which is, for all intents and purposes, is a horse, but
A camel.
or a camel.
Right.
Yeah, that's a better being on Tatooine, right? We don't know what the other people on different planets rode, but
Right. Well, and then they have the creatures they freed on Crate, and I mean, or not on Crate, on Canto Bite,
yeah.
and just all kinds of creatures. But they're normal. But this is a bird. You're right.
Yeah, but this is and so if you're not reading those closed captions, once again, we're going to harp on this as the day is long because it matters.
Right. It does. I mean, there's all kinds of layers. I watch Mando without the closed captions every morning to just get the full experience. And I turn on the closed captions, and I should really be using the descriptive audio track because I've always heard that reveals a few more details. We get some more info from this lieutenant whose name I will never remember. Nolan. He doesn't care about these clone troopers' plight. He is nasty to these guys. I mean, it's not even like he doesn't. We had Rampart, who looked at the clones as tools, but he kind of spoke to them like people. This guy does not even come close. He's just a really bad guy. And I put in my notes, perhaps worst Imperial ever right here, ? And we're going to get to see that is confirmed as a yes at the end of this.
Yep.
So Crosshair and Lieutenant Nolan come in to talk to the 3 clones. Mayday is the clone commander there. He does not respect this lieutenant. A commander is obviously above a lieutenant. The lieutenant doesn't see it that way because he's a regular person. This guy's a clone. And so
Imperial, right?
An Imperial. And so he takes his Mayday asks his 2 remaining clone troopers show the lieutenant around, and Mayday and Crosshair are going to have a conversation here. Just how long have you known this guy? Why'd you get stuck on this job? Blah blah blah. And it's an important scene to humanize Mayday and kind of build a little bit of rapport between him and Crosshair.
Right, and all of these little scenes. This episode, if you were to sit there and condense it down, like we're probably 5-10 minutes into this. There's a lot of scenes that for dramatic pauses and effect are, in my opinion, grinding down Crosshair this whole time. And this is overt. It's apparent. I mean, these are his brothers, that have served in a war together, and he is staunchly Imperial and with unquestioning loyalty. And here we see the cracks starting to form from the very start of this episode to this right now, where the cold indifference from the Empire to these clones, not sending reinforcements, not giving them bad equipment. That's going to be relevant later.
Right.
Pay close attention. Not having any care if his brothers are dead.
Right. In this episode, again, we should iterate that the Bad Batch is not in this episode. This is a Crosshair-centric episode, just like the Solitary Clone.
Yeah.
And it is these Crosshair-centric episodes, they are heavy because they are all about Crosshair's experience in the new transitioning military. We don't really get to see the transition in the Bad Batch-centric episodes. We may see visual transitions in, like, here are guys in Stormtrooper armor now. A few episodes ago, they were clones, things like that. Here's a ship looks different. Here's what the Empire is doing on these worlds. But this is how we see the Imperial military forming, and just the way that the Empire is set up by Palpatine. Palpatine had the Empire as all of these warring factions vying for power. It was all about who was the strongest, who was the best. He ran the Empire like the Sith run their religion because he wants to maintain control, and the best way for him to maintain control is have all these people at each other's throats and just being terrible. Yeah. And so that's what we see throughout, and we see Crosshair's perspective on this coming from the Republic, where that was not really the case. The Republic was politically corrupt, but the Jedi were just leaders. They cared about their clone troopers. Plo Koon, he goes, you're not just numbers to me. Like, this is important, but we don't see that anymore.
Yeah, beacons of hope, scions, like all the posters, the lightsaber up front, everybody looking up to it.
Right, exactly. The Jedi were leaders they could follow. None of the Imperials are that way. So the clones, there's an attack on the outpost, and the 2 remaining clones, other than Mayday and Crosshair, they get killed in the attack. Imperial officer does not care, says that they failed again, this attack happened, and that the Raiders are getting away with the equipment. They found where the Raiders retreated through a cave, and now Crosshair and Mayday must pursue them.
Crosshair winged one, clipped him, and the Raider leaves a blood trail down to this cave.
Yes, exactly. And it's good scenes from Crosshair as an expert sniper like he is. He gets blinded for a second by an explosion. It's a good little action scenes. But Lieutenant Nolan sends Mayday and Crosshair through this tunnel. They're marching through these frigid temperatures, through this ice tunnel. There's rumblings.
And Mayday was even like, you need to send the rest of our guys out. And Mayday had remarked early in this episode, if you go past the boundaries of this place, you're going to die.
Right.
We don't have the equipment. The conditions are too harsh. And so, like, Mayday pleads to this lieutenant, like, for 2 crates, your transport ships are going to be here in a few hours. Why?
Right.
Why? All of my men are dead. And I'm expounding on what's not said here. He doesn't say this explicitly, but he's like, are you for real? So it lends credence to the even more how terrible this guy is, how terrible the Empire is, and is further wearing down Crosshair.
Right. And he cares only about efficiency. He talks about the waste of Imperial resources multiple times throughout, and that becomes important at the end of the episode as well. And it's worth noting that Mayday is totally right about their lack of equipment. We see, not just in the Clone Wars, but in Revenge of the Sith, clone troopers outfitted with, like, snow gear, and they have on hoods, and they look like Imperial snowtroopers, and they have the equipment to deal with this. Mayday is just in regular clone trooper armor.
With rags added on to it.
Yeah, exactly. To keep him a semblance of warm. Because the clone trooper armor was not designed... No armor is designed for cold conditions unless it is explicitly designed that way.
Right.
And so they have basically no warmth. It probably is designed to be cooled, honestly.
Right.
And so they're just in a bad situation. But they get sent out anyway. They march through this cave, and then Crosshair steps on a mine, on a pressure mine, that won't go off until he takes his foot off. There's a whole movie about this on Netflix that I saw a few years ago where the guy steps on a mine. Spoiler alert. It was just a little toy soldier in a tin can the whole movie. It was an entertaining enough movie. But that's what this scene is. And Mayday knows, he sees how ruthless Crosshair is, because Crosshair remarks about the Raiders leaving dead weight behind, and Mayday just kind of gets the vibe that Crosshair is not a normal clone here. Crosshair is remarking on how he's going to leave dead weight, and that he still is, he's an Imperial diehard. He's accepting orders right now and all of that. And so Mayday is able to disarm the mine, but while he's disarming the mine, he asks Crosshair what unit he's from. And he remarks that he doesn't answer at first, and the answer is he was Clone Force 99. Mayday lights up enough so you know that he knows what group that is. Everyone's heard of Clone Force 99. He's like, what happened to them? And Crosshair just says they're gone, implying that they're dead, and he knows they're not, but he's not going to sell out his brothers.
And I think in the reading in between the lines here and seeing the facial expressions on these characters, you can see some remorse that they're gone. And it's even worse because he knows they're not dead.
Right.
Remorse, like, look what all that's happened. Look what all he's seen, and he left them behind.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
And he's questioning his past choices.
Yep. And
let me tell you a quick aside. I met some guys in Iraq who disarmed mines and found mines, and they taught us how to find mines without killing ourselves. And mines are horrific devices, and so pray you never come across one. They are of evil.
Yes.
What they do to people.
You're absolutely right.
Horrifying. And seeing this, it kind of made me sick. I understand it's kind of silly to talk about a Star Wars podcast, but mines are gross.
No, that's important. You've had experiences like that many people haven't, and so it's important to add to the detail here.
Anyway, sorry to going to down note. This whole episode's a down note.
We're going to keep going downhill from here.
Yeah. Okay, so, the mine is disarmed, and they continue on. And they find the Raiders. There's some guards out front, and Mayday remarks that this will be no problem for us. They approach, silently take out the two guards, observe the other guys, throw in a concussion grenade to disable them. And here's a stark contrast from past episodes. This is a huge firefight. One guy backs out a speeder, and Crosshair shoots this dude in the face.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good firefight. It's a good little battle scene for sure.
In other cases, guns are being chopped in half by lightsabers, and droids are the only thing getting shot. These guys are getting shot.
Yes, and they're not even clones. They're just normal people.
Raiding from the Empire, which is morally correct, if you ask me.
Right? No, you're right. And it's a big fight. The clones succeed. They get the two crates, and they find out that inside the two crates is just some stormtrooper armor.
Yeah, stormtrooper like we've always seen, we're always used to.
Right. They're sent after this flimsy piece of crap armor that is not for them. It's designed for the new military, and they just risked their lives. Two of them took out a large contingent of raiders, almost killed themselves on a mine, and then the worst of the worst happens, and an avalanche begins.
Yeah, sent on a suicide mission by their heartless, ruthless lieutenant, and for nothing.
No,
for
exactly.
trash.
And they're buried under the avalanche. Crosshair emerges, and he saves Mayday, but he pulls him out of the snow and says, let's go, we got to get out of here. Mayday's way too hurt to move on. And Crosshair's foreshadowing earlier was, I'm not going to take dead weight. Mayday thinks he's done, and he tells Crosshair to leave him.
Yeah, and right fast, what's the implication of this armor being stored at this place for so long?
Well,
that the Empire has planned on for quite a long time to have
replacing
the clones.
You're absolutely right. At least 36 rotations worth
At least
planned,
that
but much
much.
longer than that.
Much
Because
longer
Mayday's
than
been
that.
stationed there a long time.
He said a year.
Yeah, a year. Which this is also very helpful to indicate where we are on the timeline after Revenge of the Sith. We don't know how long before that year Order 66 took place, but we know that the first season of Bad Batch was in 19 BBY, right after Order 66. And so this implies we're at least in 18 BBY, if not 17 BBY. And so this is an important, finally we get a date marker. People have kind of been talking about how we don't know how long the Bad Batch has taken place over, and so this is a good little marker for us. But Crosshair has a moral epiphany when he's excavating Mayday, and that he's not going to leave him behind. Mayday saved him from that mine. Crosshair is going to figure out a way, and he uses a sniper as a crutch and carries Mayday all the way back.
Over mountains, over snowy mountains. He lost his helmet in the avalanche, so he's even less protected than he already was.
Yep.
And carries Mayday over the mountains and into the courtyard, the whatever it is, and the clones in quasi stormtrooper armor approach. Lieutenant Nolan.
I think those are regular men. I think those are already stormtroopers. They've retired. I think those are just normal conscripts now.
Okay.
Because the voices are different.
The voices are different.
And there's an important part about the reactions. And I'll get to that in a moment. But continue.
But yeah, so Lieutenant Nolan approaches them. He's angry at them. Like, you failed your mission. And Mayday dies. Heart-wrenching.
Yes. He's on the ground. He's choking and coughing.
And Crosshair says, get this man a medic. He's about to die.
And, the lieutenant is he failed. There's no reason to help him. He's going to die. And
I contend that the lieutenant didn't care anyway. He was sending them out to death on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, the lieutenant was probably going to leave them at the outpost, even if they survived, honestly.
Right.
But no, he does not care. He sees Mayday pass away, and then Crosshair is beside himself. He's apoplectic. He's, you didn't save this man's life, and you just did it. You just didn't do it. There was nothing stopping you. And this is Crosshair's breaking point.
Right. Literally.
He has the most important moral epiphany we've needed to see is that Crosshair is on his knees. What more could he have done? He has sacrificed everything for the Empire just to be disregarded by the lieutenant. The lieutenant says he's going to kill Crosshair if he doesn't get up and get to work and leave Mayday on the ground.
Very harsh, very cold.
And the lieutenant turns and walks away, and Crosshair has had enough.
Yeah, and so Crosshair says, Lieutenant Nolan turns around and Crosshair shoots him in the chest.
With a pistol right in the chest. Lieutenant falls over and dies. Thank goodness.
Well, and I kind of was shocked. The scenes change in the stormtroopers approach, and there's smoke coming from the hole.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the second he shot him, I heard K2SO's voice in my head go, "You're a rebel now." That's all I could think is when Crosshair finally broke, is that he's a fugitive from the Empire, or not from the Empire now, but he's definitely a criminal.
Yeah, and so there's no telling what is running through his head. Betraying his Clone Force 99 friends, or betraying, quote unquote, from his perspective, they were the betrayers, right?
Right.
But losing his friends over for nothing.
Yeah, for absolutely nothing.
I mean, it's got to be such a heart-wrenching, harrowing experience.
Right. He's in the same boat. He's in a much worse boat than he would have been if he had left with 99, Clone Force 99. And I want to point out one thing that I missed just a second. Right after Mayday dies, but before Crosshair pulls the trigger, the stormtroopers are over there by the lieutenant, and the lieutenant tells them to get back to work. The stormtroopers can tell that there is a man dying on the ground, and they kind of stand around for a second, they kind of hesitate, and then they just kind of look at each other and shrug their shoulders and walk on. And this was, I think, a pretty important scene, in that this is showing us the Imperial military's culture being built by the officers that are in the Imperial military. That stormtroopers are still normal people. There's thousands of them. And so people are like, why would the stormtroopers do such awful things? Blah, blah, blah. They're just regular people. They're not brainwashed or anything. They're not the First Order's people who were kidnapped at birth, and they're not the clones. They're just people. But that's the importance of how a leader's culture and the way a leader acts can breed either a wonderful culture in an organization or a terrible culture in an organization.
And to build on that, have you ever heard of the Milgram experiments?
Yeah, but tell our listeners.
Okay, and I'm going to butcher this. Please go look this up for yourself. And in a nutshell, this studied, and people say it's disproven. I believe it's true. What it is, and I will make this number up, I don't remember, 60% of the time, a person will follow an authority, even if it means that they're hurting another person.
Right.
What happened literally was an actor was on one side of the wall and a paid participant was on the other and couldn't see the actor. And the paid participant was administering a quiz to the actor. And if the person got the question wrong, they would administer a shock, and that ramped up in intensity to the actor. The actor, nothing was literally happening to him, but they would react as if it was. And so the actor would intentionally get the questions wrong. And as the shocks increased, the actor would beat the wall and say, "You're hurting me. This is painful." But standing over the paid person was an authority figure, somebody in a lab coat or somebody imposing, saying, "You're not really hurting him. Keep pressing that button." And most people would keep pressing that button. And this is true today. You can take positive things from this stuff or negative things, especially in a military situation, because you need people who will follow orders under pressure and who have to hurt other people.
Because if they don't follow orders, just to give the other perspective, I mean, they're going to get somebody killed. Is the implication in almost every scenario, and so you need people to follow orders, like you said.
And that's what boot camp is for: is to weed out the people who will not follow orders. And so, I'd perfectly willing to listen to an argument that that's also a negative connotation, but in your day-to-day life, you need employees who need to follow. Like, we don't want unsafe truck drivers driving on the road.
Right.
They go through these classes, and these schools are in place so that people follow their instructors, and they don't want to face the consequences of what it means to stray outside the boundaries. And so we all want truckers. We all want our goods to be in working order. And so these following authority is a good thing. What you need to do is learn to stand by your convictions and morals.
Exactly.
And do what you think is the right thing. And if somebody wants you to do the wrong, safety is where we live, safety culture is a huge thing.
Huge.
And so if you don't follow the safety rules, and if you have to be able to buck authority to do what's safe for you and those around
Right.
you.
When authority asks you to do something normal and that you're accustomed to,
Take out
just
the trash,
listen.
sweep the floor.
But if someone tells you, "Hey, go change that light bulb," and you know that the ladder has 3 missing rungs, you just got to say, "No, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that."
I know you've been up for 24 hours, but I need you to work. I need you to drive a truck another 6.
Right.
Say no.
Not going to happen. Exactly. And so, but these stormtroopers are in this culture where they see officers behaving this way, they're going to behave this way. They're told to get back to work. There's someone on the ground. Well, our officer must know what he's talking about. We've been through boot camp. We're going to go on, and then the officer is a terrible person. And so this was just a really important scene to me that I thought was very important to show the buildup of the Empire and its culture.
Well, look at our little conversation it spurned. Great little deal.
Right,
I love
exactly.
talking about it. People don't know about that. I know this is a silly aside, but next time you walk up to a buffet line, it also has to do with, because like a line is an authority. You don't want to offend a person by cutting in front of them, right? So next time you walk up to a buffet line, buffets in some places have actually 2 sides, but most people only line up on one side. But look at the trays of food; they'll have 2 spoons in them. That means you're supposed to line up on both sides.
Right.
It serves twice as many people.
Right.
So you're not cutting the line when you go to the other side of that buffet.
Right.
Get your food first, fill your stomach, and be happy, and laugh at all the silly people who are following the invisible authority of the line.
Yep, you're right. So we have Crosshair perform this. He kills the lieutenant, and then you really think that it's going to end, especially if you watched the Mando episode first. If you're someone who's watching both of these back to back, or you're watching them the same day, the Mando episode ends extremely abruptly. Spoiler alert for people who are listening to this before the Mando episode, but it ends very, very abruptly. And so we see what I assume was going to be the end, with a little bit of a hard cut But then we get a blurry comeback into some more animated scenes. And I was really surprised that we were even getting scenes anymore. But there's a really important scene right here.
Yeah, so Crosshair wakes up, and Dr. Hemlock's assistant, I don't recall.
Dr. Amari.
Dr. Amari.
Or I don't know if she's a doctor, but Amari is her name.
Yeah, and she's got cybernetic modification. She's got hipster glasses.
She kind of looks like a woman, female tech.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
she approaches, and do you remember Crosshair's clone number, TK or whatever?
Yeah, he's CT9904.
CT9904. She says that, and then said, or should I say Crosshair?
Right.
And so this indicates that she knows who he is, that he's a special clone, Clone Force 99. He's not just another run-of-the-mill clone, right?
Right.
And I forget the exact dialogue, but the important part is she takes a blood sample from him. And so just this small scene has such wider implications.
And she tells him if he cooperates, he may survive.
Right. And of the cloning stuff that we've seen, strand casting, what was the monster? The
Zillo
Beast.
Yeah.
All this other stuff is taking place. So much setup is before. This is set up. I mean, because...
And this is clearly at Mount Tantus. Yeah. That's where she is. That's where they've taken Crosshair.
Right. And so, this is he's still part of the Bad Batch. He's Clone Force 99. It's Crosshair. And so something is going to happen where... we're getting into speculations. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna jump
we've wrapped up the episode. It's The Outpost is worth seeing, guys. Even if you just go watch it alone, it's worth seeing. It's a really exciting character study. But we will jump into our new segment. Second time ever we're using this segment, and it's inspired by our dear friend Master Yoda. We're gonna put our Master Yoda ears on right now, and we're gonna do the segment Always in Motion.
Difficult to see. Always in motion is the future.
Yeah, so this episode has so many predictions, right? And one I was leading up to is the Crosshair is going to be reunited with the rest of the Bad Batch.
Certainly so. They're going to storm Mount Tantus.
I've been waiting for this forever. I can't wait to see it happen. And then, of course, some of this stuff is really easily telegraphed, like something's going to happen between Scorch and Omega and the Bad Batch. But are we going to see Lama Su and Nala Se die somehow? I mean, they can't, they're going to get exterminated. They're going to get what they want out of them. They're going to get the cooperation for the cloning. So I guess that's a good question. What cloning is going on here? We got the impervious cells and the energy consumption. We have the blood from Crosshair. We have Omega is going to play something because she's arguably the most divergent clone, right? So what are the Imperials up to here? Is it something under the machinations of Palpatine? Is it that far extended, or is it something like a mega clone or something?
Right.
A space marine.
Right. Yeah, for you Warhammer fans like Colin. So I think for the next 4 episodes, what we're going to see is next episode, it'll come to a head with Sid. Sid is going to tip off the Empire. Scorch is going to find them. Whoever's hunting for Omega, probably Scorch also is going to find them. And that's going to result in Omega getting taken to Mount Tantus and the Batch having to mount a rescue. And in this rescue, they are going to go to Mount Tantus. They are going to find Crosshair. Crosshair is going to help liberate Omega. And this is the 4-episode plot. And so all of this setup is going to lead to that. And in these episodes, I think, Bad Batch got delayed a lot. We were supposed to have Bad Batch in 2022 was the first report. And I think some of the delay may have been intentional because there's been so much about cloning and the Empire's future and the Emperor's future in this that my prediction is they released it alongside running right into the last of Mando because of all the cloning connections with Grogu and Mando. I don't think they're going to directly tie together, but I think after you see all the Batch episodes and all the Mando episodes together, you're going to have a much larger picture of the overall cloning, strand casting idea and process that Palpatine has been building since he had Count Dooku commission this army way back before the Phantom Menace even started. And I think that that's what they're building to, is a culmination of all of these cloning experiments coming together in a head. It obviously explains away part of the Rise of Skywalker with Palpatine's clone, but I think it goes even beyond that. And I think we'll have a much larger threat that weaves together the Bad Batch and Mando and all of the cloning from the prequels, and just all of it is going to get meshed together in one long cloning story.
Very ambitious.
It is ambitious.
I hope you're right. That sounds very fun.
Storytelling ambitious, Palpatine ambitious. I think that that's what we're going to see.
Yep. Good predictions. We'll see how they hold true.
I appreciate it. So we're going to run right into our HoloNet news segment right here. We've got just a little bit of news to talk about, some exciting stuff. So right here is the HoloNet news segment.
You made the HoloNet.
Our first story today, Colin, is the Jedi Survivor director wants to make the series a trilogy, and it sounds like that if Survivor is successful, that's going to be the case. And we both know Survivor is going to be successful.
No, people are clamoring for a Star Wars game. I'm so hyped for that. Gosh, I've been reading up on it. I'm fixing to get into that. Hint, hint. But we need to go back and do a playthrough of the old game, the first game, Fallen Order.
Yeah, we certainly do. We do.
And then you've heard us talk about just the trailers of that game. Man, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, no, it is going to be fun. And, you know, I'm excited. I'm not excited for them to finish. I like these games. I want them to continue. But I am excited that if they make it a trilogy and they wrap it up, I think I'm actually off of the train. Cameron Monaghan's going to appear in something until all those games are done. Yeah. I think they want to wrap the storyline up of those games before they put them anywhere. So once they make the trilogy, then Cameron Monaghan, who was cast to look exactly like Cal, I mean, it's obviously Cal's designed after him, mocapped him, is he can be in stuff. And I'm very excited for that prospect.
Yeah, so excited.
It's a super cool story. The next piece of news is kind of silly, but I wanted to talk about it, is there is a new trailer and poster out for the documentary called A Disturbance in the Force. Are you familiar with the new documentary coming out?
No.
It is a documentary about the making and premiere of the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Oh my goodness. I've never actually had the patience to sit through
You've never seen the Holiday? I've seen it once. I don't want to see it again, but it's I think every Star Wars fan has to subject themselves to the Holiday Special at least once.
Goodness gracious, that thing was a travesty. I'm sorry to say.
It certainly was. I mean, it's they can't all be winners, but it's worth seeing, and you can find it on YouTube, bootleg DVDs at your local convention.
Yeah. That thing's crazy.
It is. It's all over the place.
Isn't it like an hour and a half long?
It's long. It's a long special. It's basically another movie. Yeah, and most of it is filler, and there's some animated stuff in there, and there's some dancing stormtroopers, and That's Chewbacca's hilarious. Family wears clothes, and he doesn't.
I watched the documentary.
Yeah, well, we need to see the documentary, and it's exciting. Everyone should go check out that trailer. It's a good trailer. It's an interesting piece of Star Wars history.
Here's
certainly.
a prediction. You're going to make me watch that to do an episode on it, aren't you?
Probably around Christmas time.
Oh, no. Oh, no. How can we do an episode about that documentary if we haven't done one on the holiday special?
Holiday special, you're right.
Okay, well, if you do that, we're going to do an episode on all the ancillary Star Wars homages, like Robot Chicken and the Muppets and stuff like that.
So I know that I also have the original 6 DVD Blu-ray set. Have you ever gone into the bonus content on that Blu-ray set? They have 3 hours worth of all the Star Wars spoofs that they think are the best Star Wars spoofs.
If I
in
have,
the back
it's
of that.
been many years.
It's really entertaining because they have some Robot Chicken scenes. They have the Weird Al Yankovic parody of Phantom Menace.
Yeah,
there's a lot of really funny stuff in there. And so we can just spin that DVD and do some commentary on all the bonus content.
One of my favorite ones. I'm having fun talking with you, Carter. So let me tell you this one. One of my favorite ones is Mark Hamill is on an episode of The Muppets, and Miss Piggy is Princess Leia, and it's of A New Hope, and Leia's the prisoner, and Mark Hamill is Luke Skywalker, right? And Miss Piggy says something along the lines of, "Help! I've been captured by Darth Vader," or whatever. He's like, and Mark Hamill says, "Wow, he must feed his prisoners pretty well."
That's
And
hilarious.
she's offended and all this other stuff. It's so funny.
And
That's
isn't-
one of my favorite ones.
Isn't Gonzo Darth Vader?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And they
that's
got
what
the
I
helmet on him.
Yeah,
It's,
it's good.
hilarious.
You
It's
can't
really
beat the Muppets. The next piece of Star Wars news is there's a new Star Wars game out. It is a Star Wars deck building game. So it's Star Wars attempt at
Don't get me
Magic the
started.
Gathering.
Don't get me started.
You're against the deck building game.
No, I'm against. They did this already.
Destiny was not a deck building game. That was a card and dice game.
Oh,
Totally
come
different.
on.
You don't build a
The
deck.
scheme is the same thing. You buy cards from the manufacturer and then you do stuff with them.
Well, yeah, okay. That's the same as saying every board game is the same. You buy cardboard from a manufacturer and then you do stuff with it. I buy
on.
pieces of metal from the car shop
I mean,
and I
you're
do
splitting
things with it.
hair. It's the difference between bologna and spam.
I'm telling this is their sincere attempt at Star Wars Magic the Gathering. I don't think I'm going to play this game. I played Magic for a number of years.
So did I, and I don't like what that does to me.
I'm out. Yeah, I'm burnt out on it. I'm not interested in playing it anymore. I've moved beyond that. If anyone still plays it, more power to you. It's a fun game. I got burnt out on it.
What we're going to have to do, for the sake of our community and fans, is buy some pre-made decks and play a couple rounds.
You're right. We got to at least give it a try. And so that little piece of news, but we're going to wrap this one up with some of the best news I've heard in a little while surrounding Star Wars film, is that the Damon Lindelof film, which is ongoing and in production currently, everybody's predicting it's going to be the movie that's announced for 2025 at Star Wars Celebration next month. I think that they're right, and we have a new rumor surrounding it that it is officially set 6 years after The Rise of Skywalker. And so that is such an exciting concept.
Yeah, so that means raising it.
And it probably means Grogu's in it,
Probably means Grogu's in it.
or at least name dropped.
Yeah. There's so much opportunity here, and it all depends on how well The Mandalorian and the team up does. Ahsoka does. Obviously, she's not going to be in it, but, I want more Ezra Bridger. I want more Sabine Wren. If we're going to have this giant united Mandalorian thing, I want to see what happens in that.
Right. No, you're totally right. So that's just an exciting little piece of news.
Alternatively, I'm quite fine with a one-off adventure. I like the Rey character, how it ended up.
Well, we do know that his story will not focus on the sequel characters. He said he will have new characters and only will have some sequel characters in it.
Well, they say that today.
Sure,
Stuff changes.
you're right. They can always change it.
Cara Dune was probably supposed to be a big part of Mandalorian season
She was.
3.
She was supposed to headline her own show, Rangers of the New Republic. That got canceled.
Yep.
So you're right. We'll see, but it's really exciting to hear that they're going to for sure make a story after The Rise of Skywalker and that it's coming in just 2 years.
Yep. Exciting. Can't wait.
You're right. So we're going to wrap this podcast up with our Star Wars moment of the week.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Colin, what is your Star Wars moment of the week?
So if you'll notice, Carter posted on our Instagram page a book just came out yesterday.
Yep, just came out Tuesday, March the 7th.
Jedi Battle Scars by Sam Maggs. I drive a bunch for my work, and so I listen to the audiobook version. It's about 10 hours. I'm about an hour into it, and I don't know anything about it. And obviously, I know literally because I've read, quote unquote, a little bit on it. But on the cover is Cal Kestis and Seer and Grease and
Marin.
And so this is going to be the tie-in novel between Fallen Order and Survivor.
Right. And I got the physical copy, and so I'm really excited to jump into it. I haven't jumped into it yet.
It's interesting to start off with.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tip my hand. I'm not going to get any reviews yet till we're done. We got to do this thing. It's fair due. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but I like the characters. I like the setting. There's a lot goes into what they're doing in the ship. Reading a book is so much better than watching something on a screen. You get to fill in the gaps with your own mind, not only from your perspective, but from whoever wrote it. And there's so many more details that your mind coalesces into something more tangible, in my opinion.
No, I think you're totally right. It is going to be exciting to hop into that book. I'm really excited. And filling in that timeline gap is going to be fun. Where the trailer was we only saw BD and Cal. We have seen no hint of the other characters.
Well, Seer was in there, but crew was totally disparate.
Yeah, and the Mantis was Crash.
Yeah. Grease wasn't in it.
Marin wasn't in
Marin
it.
wasn't in it, and a bunch of other characters were in it that we know nothing about. And Seer was the only one, but she was living in a monastery or something.
Right.
That was our speculation back in the day.
Yeah, you're absolutely
So,
right.
I'm pumped to read this. I think I heard somewhere the reviews weren't that good. I don't know. I'm not reserving judgment until I've read the thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it could be great and it could be not. I've seen mixed reviews, like you've said, but I've heard some people really like it, and I've heard some people are kind of disappointed. But we're gonna have some honest reviews out for it whenever we're finished reading it. We're not privileged enough to get the exclusive copies or advanced copies like some podcasts are yet, but hopefully we'll be getting that soon.
Yep.
And so we're excited to continue to talk about Star Wars books with you guys. For my Star Wars moment of the week, Colin, you mentioned this on our previous podcast. We're starting an RPG. It's going to be available on our Patreon at the $2 level, and it's going to be a live play Star Wars Edge of the Empire RPG. We're going to play new characters that we've created, and it's going to be a great time. We really hope that you'll check it out. We're going to release the first episode exclusively, we're going to release the first episode to everybody on this podcast, Spotify, Apple. You'll be able to find it everywhere. If you enjoy it, you'll have to subscribe on the Patreon to hear what happens next. But we're going to be recording that hopefully in April, and it may release in late April or early May, and we're really, really excited about that. I've been working on my character. I've been doing a lot of work on my character, and it's been awesome. I've finished him completely. I've given his background to the DM, and he's working it into the story, and I cannot wait to play. Every day I have anticipation to play.
You wrote how many pages of backstory for this guy?
I wrote my character 8 pages of backstory.
Oh, I thought it was 6. It's grown since then. And that's not to mention what you've tied into my character.
That's right. Yeah. Colin and I have linked backstories. That's going to be exciting. It's been really fun getting prepared for this game.
We're going to have a lot to talk about this. I had so much fun writing my character. I had so much fun reading your story. Your story, Carter, I got to say, is phenomenal.
I appreciate it.
It's so tempting to write like this. You're the mega hero. Like the colloquial term is Mary Sue. Go look that up. It's a complicated little deal because there's background context. But it's so tempting to want to be this Superman, right?
Right.
Well, what we know as adults, and you find out playing these games, is you get to be pretty boring if you're unstoppable.
Yeah, you're right.
You want to tell anybody about your character yet?
No, I'm going to reserve it. I think we're going to release the character bios slowly on the Patreon. So if you want to check it out, you'll have to see them there.
But then I'll say this note. We have a full party. There's 4 of us and the DM. All of us are going to have fleshed out characters. I think it's a well-rounded party. It's so exciting to see how this is developing this early stages of the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. We're still a month out. We still have a lot of planning to do, but it's been really good so far. So we're very excited. We hope that you guys will tune into that. Like we said, it's on our Patreon. You can check out the Patreon. We have all kinds of rewards at all kinds of tiers, starting at just $1. You can engage with the community on a whole new level. We love our community. We appreciate all the support you guys have given us. We love our Patreon community. We love our community that we've built across all social medias. We've got a great Discord that is growing and that we continue to engage with. Lots of memes, lots of discussion in there, immediate discussion about The Mandalorian, about The Bad Batch. If you guys want to hear our opinions or thoughts on those, you can hop in the Discord and hear them immediately. That's the same with our brand new Facebook group. If you're on Facebook, if you're a little old school, go to Star Wars Station Cantina. You can just search it up, join the Facebook group. It says it's private. All you got to do is answer the questions. What are the first names of the 2 hosts of the podcast?
That's to keep out scammers and spammers.
Exactly. It's not to keep you guys out. We want the fans in there. It doesn't cost you anything to be in there, and it's a fun community. I mean, it's been up for a couple days, has a dozen posts in it already. I mean, it's active. And so we'd love for you to hop in there. Give us a follow on Instagram, starwars.station. Get us at Twitter at SW_station for all my steaming hot takes. Give us a follow on Twitch at, what's our Twitch, Colin?
Twitch.tv/Station Media.
So give us a follow on all these platforms. We really appreciate y'all's support, but the number one thing you can do for us is give us a review on Apple Podcasts. Give us a review on Spotify. It takes a couple seconds. If you've made it this far into the podcast, you must like what we're doing, and that is the number one way you help us spread our community. You help us keep the positive vibes going throughout the Star Wars community, throughout Star Wars podcasting. We love what we do. This is an awesome experience for us. We really enjoy engaging with all of our friends and community that we're engaged with. And so we just really appreciate it, guys. If you could share it with your friends, that's a big help. But just keep talking about Star Wars, keep talking about Star Wars Station, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, so much coming down the pipe between media, our machinations. I mean, I feel like Palpatine sometimes, coming up with different ideas of how we're going to embolden our community, make things better, because we love talking about Star Wars. That movie, their Return of the Jedi, they're playing again. Gosh, I'm so pumped for that. What movies are coming out? TV, Ahsoka. Can you believe we're getting an
time to
Ahsoka
be
show?
a Star Wars fan, certainly.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be alive right now. All this stuff is coming out. You know, my kids are going to be, oh, Dad, what was it like when this came out? We already have these discussions. What was it like when the prequels came out?
Right.
Oh my gosh! And getting to relive that with my children that we're already doing now. Come join us. Have these discussions. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, y'all. It's a great day.
Absolutely. We appreciate y'all joining us. We're going to keep Star Wars podcasting as long as you guys keep listening. So may the Force be with you and keep it wizard.